Welcome back to the podcast, Orlando. So we're doing a revamp, and we're here in a new studio doing a little filming. So pretty exciting. Orlando was like you were one of my first guests, like I think 10th or something. I didn't look.
10th is different to first.
Yeah.
Yeah. 10th is fine. Yeah.
That like
first batch of 10.
Yeah, first batch, first like trial. So I'm excited to have you back, and you have a new role, which I'm excited to get into. There's so much to talk about. We were talking about it before. There's so much in this space, and it's growing, and you're growing with it. So congratulations.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Emotionally, not physically.
No, yeah. No. But yeah, so can you introduce yourself, who you are and what your new role is at the moment, and with which company?
Yeah, for sure. So as you know, that's like a start. My name is Orlando Hayes, and currently I'm working with an organization called CH4 Global.
Nice.
And they're an organization that's working on methane reduction in cattle through seaweed, and I work with them as their sustainability manager. So that's looking at their sort of operational and greenhouse gas emissions, looking at how they design and make new buildings, and also looking at how they certify and validate the methane emissions that they're creating in their product as well.
Wow, sounds like a big job. And you did mention to me some of the stuff you're doing, and it seems like a lot of it went over my head. And even I'm in sustainability as well, and I was still like, I don't know some of this stuff. So yeah, what actually inspired you? Did you find this job? Like, how'd you get into this area? Did you find it in like the methane?
It was actually completely a random ordeal, I'd say.
Nice.
I think I'd suddenly come across this new seaweed industry as a lot of chat was happening about it, and it was really interesting. So I dove a bit deeper and did a bit of research, and eventually just like cold emailed the Seaweed Coordination being like, hey, I think you're really cool. I'd love to come work for you.
Yeah.
They said no.
No,
I was
really?
like, okay, great. Thank you so much. Got rejected from that one.
Good try.
But then I reached out to another one, and they were like, yeah, I would love to have you.
Awesome.
And they were amazing. Rowena Pullen was my person I contacted at the time, and she's been incredible to work with in the last 2 years. Wow. But yeah, she brought me into that role at that point, and it's just been more interesting and gotten more complicated and more projects coming on since then. Yeah. And that was about 2 years ago, I think now.
Time went quick. Yeah.
It went so quick.
Yeah, because last time I remember you're at Arup and then, and doing other stuff.
Yeah, then at Mott McDonald with Amanda Sturgeon for a while.
Okay.
Regenerative design, which I don't know if Australia's ready for yet in the construction industry, but yeah, we'll get there. But yeah, and then moved from that into this role, which was a random transition. I think it was a kind of temporary at the time. Yeah. It was sort of like just going to be 3 or 4 months, but ended up 2 years later we're still there. So
that's so cool.
It's fun.
I love it. So yeah, if people aren't familiar with CH4, can you give us like a bit of spiel? People might not know what methane is, but yes, give us your spiel about what CH4's mission and main objectives are, because they're pretty important ones.
Yeah, they're pretty important.
Pretty important.
They're pretty
climate
good.
change.
So CH4 has an overarching big goal of creating gigaton emissions in our greenhouse gas emissions sort of world by about 2030. We're focused on methane emissions at the moment in cattle. So enteric methane is sort of methane that comes from the gut of ruminants and livestock. That is either burped out or farted out of their bodies.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And the main mission is basically to work towards that goal of large global scale greenhouse gas emission reduction by working closely with farmers and creating very usable and applicable solutions that they can tackle sort of climate change right now in the near future.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. So is this different from other organizations? Like how, I feel like methane is not focused as much as maybe it should be, or do you feel like this is something that's different from what other people are doing? Because people are very focused on carbon dioxide, but methane is obviously like a carbon dioxide equivalent, which, equivalent puts all the emissions, all the different gases together in one thing. But yeah, how is this different from other organizations?
So organizations or greenhouse gas emissions?
Oh, how's it different? How is CH4's mission different?
How we're tackling it?
Yeah, different.
Yeah, good question. I think CH4 got its mission. It was founded a little while ago by Steve Mellor, who's our current CEO, as well as a few others, co-founded the organization. And they were really focused on methane because it was an under-talked about greenhouse gas. Mm-hmm. As you were saying before, there are a whole range of greenhouse gases out there. Their sources range from anything from like the carbofluorocarbons in the aerosols, or like you have gas leaks from different coolant systems. There's a whole range of things that might be. There's a whole range of greenhouse gas emissions. Methane is one of them. Obviously, one we don't talk about is carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
And it is the sort of core one in the sense that all other greenhouse gases are measured in reference to carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
So methane in that sort of range has about a 28 times the global warming potential, which is, its ability to contribute to global warming and climate change, 28 times that of carbon over a 100-year life cycle.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's quite a significant and we're considered a potent greenhouse gas. On that scale, there are things that might be 10,000 times that of carbon, but much smaller amounts. So methane's important because it has a very high global warming potential, but also a very high volume of emissions annually globally. So think about things like cattle in Australia, things like all ruminants globally, like there's millions of cows, massive agricultural industries that are contributing large amounts of methane to the atmosphere. And that is quite a potent greenhouse gas emission that has significant global potential. So hence that was a focus area for CH4. And it just so happened to be quite an interesting and applicable solution in the form of Asparagopsis armata and taxiformis, this red seaweed.
Oh, big word. Yeah, so...
Use big words.
Big words.
Using big words today.
Very good.
We're sleepy, but it's big words.
Can you say that one again?
Asparagopsis armata.
So that's the seaweed.
That's one of the red seaweed strains. There's red seaweed strains. There's two, taxiformis armata Asparagopsis armata and Asparagopsis taxiformis.
So which one are CH4 dealing with?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Both. Yeah, both are native to the Australian East Coast as well as New Zealand and Southeast Asia. So they'll grow in that sort of that region. So we grow both. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So, and you're developing the sustainability framework around this. So, what are some of the core pillars to make sure that harvesting the seaweed is sustainable?
Yeah, it's a fun question. Because, in this fun world, like CH4 operates as a startup in this world. And obviously we have to work with other systems. We're independent from anything globally. So as any organization has and any individual has an environmental impact in the choices they make and the way they interact with the world. So you use some energy, you have carbon emissions impact, you use some resources, you're taking away from, finite natural resources. So for CH4, what we're looking at is how can we operate as a climate change company in a world that might not be fully sustainable at this point in time to cause as minimal sort of negative impact as possible as we work towards a positive impact future. So in terms of the areas we focus on for that, there are sort of 6 main pillars we look at. The first one is the most overarching and crucial area, which is ensuring that we get to a point where the methane mitigation from our product, so that red seaweed in those cows, reducing those burps and those farts, mostly the burps, making sure that negative, that reduction of greenhouse gas emissions is a greater than our operational carbon impact.
That makes sense.
So we want to get to a point where, we might be using some energy, we might be using some water, we might be generating some waste, using some materials to build plants and facilities, but overall making sure that impact on the great scheme of things is positive, which is quite a fun challenge in this day and age when you have, especially in Australia, we've got a high carbon intensive grid still. We're still transitioning out of, fossil fuels. So it's a challenge for us, but one that we're interested in. So that's one of the pillars. The others sort of look at how we use resources as well. So where we get our energy from is one. We want to reach a point where we're fully using renewable energy, as the global area is. We want to get to a point where the materials and construction materials we're using in all our projects are 100% sustainable. Sustainable being quite a vague term in that sense, but looking at materials that are either biodegradable, recyclable, reusable, have potential at the end of their life. So building with materials that are locally available and that, reflecting on the countries and the areas that we operate and build in, trying to find sources of materials that at the end of the life of that project, there's another end for them. They're not just going to waste, not just going to landfill. That's a really important one for us. Reducing our potable water usage. So we want to envision a point in time which CH4 gets to where we aren't using any potable water in our seaweed manufacturing, anything like that. Obviously, we have staff that drink water, so there will be potable water in our operations,
minimal,
but not using it at an industrial scale. Another one that we're looking at is sort of like the waste that we generate as well. So as an organization, we have suppliers, we have operation things we need, we even have packaging for our products, things like that. But for us, the Semi framework sets up these ambitious goals where it's like we want to look at to a point where we aren't putting anything into landfill. All the waste that we are either using, generating, or sourcing has another use, has another place where it can go afterwards. And the last pillar that we focus on or that we work towards is where and why we build on different sites. So focusing on building either, refurbishing old sites that have been used previously for industrial practice, or sort of brown sites. And then if we are going to be using any sort of green sites, so sites that haven't previously been used for industrial or residential or in development, working with local Aboriginal groups and First Nation groups to ensure that that land is being dealt with and managed according to both of those sort of morals and understandings of sustainability and like local design.
It's amazing. A lot of good
bits.
Stuff. That's so good.
I got a bit lost in the weeds there.
No, it's good because it sounds like my job, because I'm in roads, but I have the same pillars. I think most sustainability managers would have the same kind of pillars that they want to focus on, reducing our waste, making sure the materials we get are, either already recycled goods or can be disposed easily, and make sure we work with communities. And that's amazing. I love hearing all that stuff.
Yeah. I think you come back to the same issues.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's the same issues.
It's not the one thing where we kind of know the issues. Yeah. It's like, how fast can you make them happen?
Yeah.
Like for us, like we set these goals as like an ambitious sustainability idea. Like I don't think we can say, and this is my personal opinion, and I think a lot of organizations will have these sort of goals they set the sustainability around. But I don't think you can call yourself a sustainable organization until you reach that point. So for us, it's about setting really high-end goals, really like long goals. So like if we were to meet all these things, we would deem that sort of as sustainable operations.
That's interesting, because I've never really heard someone say that, because people are claiming they're sustainable even though they've just set targets. And that's interesting. We set a target now, we are sustainable. But so are you saying you don't think most organizations will be sustainable until they reach maybe their 2030 goals or their
2050 even, like who knows? I think like having like the flag point to be like, that is the point which is sustainable. For me, like personally, how I like to think about it is like the sort of, and it's quite a brutal test, but like the infinite time test, where it's like, if you can't keep operating that way infinitely, then is that deemed sustainable over the long term? If you haven't reaced that point where you can say, we're not majorly extracting from finite resources, we're not relying on finite resources, we're reusing things where possible, we're not drawing down the environmental health of this planet, like that's a point which you're like, cool, we've reached a viable point of sustainability. But until that point, what we're doing is we're just kind of like trying not to be as bad. Trying not to be as bad with the environment until we get to that point, which is fine thing. It's a fine thing. It's just like something to come to terms with, I think, as you would know in some industry where as a sustainability manager, you have to kind of work with a whole range of people towards that sort of goal. Yeah, it's like a balancing act, like trying to balance like in the old ways, but trying to push the new ways without trying to blow people's budgets. It's kind of like, what foot do you put forward first? Like with EVs, like people are trying to buy EVs, but there's no chargers. It's kind of like we're transitioning, but it's pushing towards something that, I don't know. And it's kind of like one foot in back and 1 foot forward. It's a bit hard, don't you think? Oh, it's definitely tricky. I get the very privileged position of working with a company that's new.
That's nice.
And so it's not about as much about breaking old habits as about like bringing in the right ones really early.
That's cool.
So that's really makes it a lot easier for me. I talk to a lot of people who are working with organizations trying to bring them through this journey or bring them towards it. And it's hard because like some organizations it's just not viable. If you're an organization in an industry that long term is likely going to fall through in terms of how it can actually operate in a world where we meet or we don't overdraw from our planet's resource availability, there's just a few that won't make it, and it's rough. And I think like it's really nice for me to just work with a company or organization that you can be a bit of a clean slate with and say, cool, this is the ideals we want to put in. That's
pretty exciting. I love it. Okay, in terms of like new things, I guess the Eco Park is a new commitment. It's in Louth Bay, is that right?
Louth Bay.
Louth.
Yeah, Louth Bay.
And it's a park, I assume, where you'll be making the seaweed and doing all different, probably processing it. So how is this a part of the sustainability goals, and what's in this park that's different from other industrial facilities?
Yeah, so the Eco Park that we have announced down in Louth Bay, which is in South Australia, is a sort of large-scale seaweed growing and processing facility, as you're sort of saying.
Yeah.
For us, it's sort of the next step in scaling up the growth, how we can grow and make enough seaweed to supply the millions and millions of cattle that are in Australia.
Yeah.
So that's, in terms of the mission for CH4, that's what the step forward looks like in that front. From an operational sustainability perspective, it is going to be looking at how we will think about designing and making and constructing and building infrastructure for this seaweed in a way that is as environmentally friendly, environmentally sound as possible, which is such a buzzword way to say it, but like is just a complex map of different ideas and thoughts and, you know, research that goes into trying to identify how to build something that is environmentally sound.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that sounds like, it sounds perfect, not perfect, but you're starting for the clean slate. I'm assuming like it might be a brownfield site that you're putting it on?
Yeah, I can't say too much about the site itself, but there's previous infrastructure and operations on that site.
Okay,
so
great.
yeah, it's not like we're clearing some forests to make way for some new climate change coming industry. Yeah, we've got a nice site to work with. It's very close to the coast, which for us is obviously really important, having access to seawater to feed and nourish the seaweed. But yeah, it's a great site.
Awesome. Yeah, I won't get too much into the site, but I guess I kind of want to get into the. So I didn't have too. So in terms of the actual seaweed, I didn't have too many questions on this, but the actual seaweed, we were talking before. Why is this seaweed different? Like, why can we feed the seaweed to cows and it will reduce their burps and farts?
What is with this seaweed? Yeah. Absolutely fair. Well, I think, like, as you might know, like, you know, in Australia we have like a whole range, hundreds of different seaweed. Yeah. I was just listening to a podcast by like PR down in the south coast in Australia, who is a bit of a visionary when it comes to Australian seaweed.
Yeah.
And there's hundreds of seaweed in Australia. What's so special about these two different types of red seaweed, the Asparagopsis taxiformis and Asparagopsis armata, is they have a high content or a significant content of bromoform in that seaweed, which is a molecule that usually actually creates in stressful environments as a defense mechanism, but exists within that seaweed. And bromoform within the stomach of a cow or a ruminant, which you might include like sheep or, you know, a whole range of other animals, but like within you have ruminant, but let's go with the cow. It inhibits the development of methane. It's a methane inhibitor sort of molecule. It breaks down the chemical pathways that would usually lead to the generation of methane. It stops that and usually diverts that to form a few different other types of molecules within that stomach or compounds. That's awesome. That's sort of like, you know, the main compound is that bromoform. But that being said, there is a lot more there's a lot more molecules and complex sort of biology going on within that seaweed that both generates that but supports that production. And they have found that, you know, you can actually synthetically make bromoform outside of a lab in a lab sort of environment, but the efficacy or that, you know, how much methane it reduces is less than if you were using that seaweed. So there are other supportive compounds and things in the seaweed that help interrupt that metagenesis process, but the key one is bromoform.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so if it's being, I'm in this space, if you have to keep growing seaweed, is there concerns about making, I guess, depleting the seaweed population, or does it grow quite quickly? You can not answer, but I'm just curious.
No, it's so fair. Yeah. Well, we grow, I don't know what to say about this. We grow on land. It's EcoPark's land-based facility for growouts. So in that sort of environment, like a lot of seaweed industry or other land-based aquaculture, you have nurseries where you cultivate. So younger seaweed, you take from that, grow them in larger sort of grow-out areas, and then you'd sort of harvest that. That would then re-top up, and then you sort of go through that process. So
within the eco park, it's going to thrive by itself.
So in that sort of system, it's we might, top that up every now and again with some new spores from the ocean or new sort of samples. But we're not harvesting directly from sites in the ocean.
I see. Yeah.
So in that sense, we wouldn't be farming.
Not farming. Yeah. Let's clear it out.
It's gone. There's none left. Yeah. We're fresh out of seaweed.
Okay, so that's pretty interesting. So I guess the next part in CH4's journey is to making sure they can actually maybe verify the actual methane reduction, because it's important. You can't, in this market, you need to make sure everything's verified and you're actually reducing a certain amount of methane. So what's the process been like in getting some certifications that you're actually reducing methane, and what's that like getting a third-party certification? And
getting some evidence. What's actually going on?
What's going on?
How good is it? No, that's so fair. That. Well, it's like, because this seaweed, this Asparagopsis solution that is coming out. There's a few organizations who are running it, who are sort of providing it, but because it's still quite a new solution, the actual both the research and the methods for measuring that reduction are still quite new. So there's a few technology solutions within that. You have things like green feed machines, which sort of a cow will put the head into to get a little treat, and it will breathe into, and that will take a little sample and little sort of track how much methane's coming out of that cow.
Cool.
There's sort of like laser-based systems that you can use as well to measure that methane. There's a few more emerging ones that are coming out soon that make it a bit easier. But because the technology for measurement is still quite new, the research is still quite new, the certification is sort of still getting established of how do we actually measure how much methane is getting reduced.
Makes sense.
That being said, we're looking at a few different areas for that. So organizations in the voluntary carbon market have put forward methodologies of how to measure that thing. So you have organizations like Vera and organizations like Gold Standard, who are operate in the voluntary carbon credit market, who provide methodologies on measurement. And we're looking at both those organizations to see how we might work with them to certify that reduction. Currently, that process can go one of two ways. You can sort of either use some of those technologies that I was mentioning, that green feed machine, that laser technology, to go and test on farms. So you can go into a farm, go directly test it, take those results, say we fed, we looked at this farm, we measured before we gave it seaweed, we measured after we gave it seaweed, this was the reduction.
Yeah.
It was, let's say it was 70%. Methane, the seaweed product can reduce up to sort of 90% from trials to date. That's one option.
Mm-hmm.
The other option is basically looking at all the research and trials and tests to date. So there have been a lot of studies on farm and published papers looking at how effective that seaweed is.
Okay.
So looking at all those different research papers, bringing them together into a meta-analysis and saying, based on the research to date, with the variable factors counted for, we can accurately predict that this is the reduction of that farm.
Okay.
So they're the two options that you can kind of go through.
Okay.
Who you go them through, like who you use to follow that can change and stuff, but that's the sort of process we're looking at.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so a bit of mixture of the research and quantitative data to a bit of
They sort of feed into each other,
Yeah.
So usually when someone does do some on-site measurements, that'll get published into a paper.
Oh, yeah.
For us, it's about trying to figure out how much research we need to start making as accurate as we can estimations of methane reduction.
Interesting.
Mm.
Cool. So it seems like that might be one of your challenges, but what are some of your challenges as the sustainability manager at CH4 that you worry about, or that you're, what do you worry about in your company?
I sleep so peacefully at night most of the time, so it's pretty good.
Okay, that's good.
Don't worry about too much. Maybe that's more me as a person than the
No,
environment I'm in.
We'll figure it out.
But for CH4 Global, it's probably the fact that we are operating in a startup environment. So CH4 is just recently got a new round of funding, and there's a whole, we won't go into the whole world of startup world, but it can be pretty hectic, pretty chaotic. There's some factors about that world that is inherently kind of unsustainable as well. So I think operating in those bounds of startup, climate change startups, like trying to like make sure that we're not losing the main focus, which is avoiding climate change, horrible impacts of climate change, making sure that we're working towards that goal in a very fast environment.
Yeah.
That is something that is a challenge all the time, I guess, with every sustainability manager. It's about what people are prioritizing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't run the world.
Not yet.
Not yet. So we can only put in, what we can get in there. So that sort of fast-paced environment can be very tricky to make sure things are happening in a way that is sound enough.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting. Cool. I kind of want to get into your side. I guess I'm not sure if it's a side project, but Camada daybed. Did I say that right as well?
Camada daybed.
Camada. Oh, gosh. Camada daybed sounds very relaxing. So you're a bit of in your spare time, I guess, you're designing and doing some architectural work with some of your colleagues and friends you've met. So I'm just curious.
Bit of industrial design.
Industrial design? Is that yeah, you said that too. Industrial design. So what is industrial design, and what is that? And then what was your inspiration for making a daybed that's sustainable?
Well, to be fully honest, I don't actually understand the boundaries of industrial design.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Are they necessarily sustainable, or just using...
I'm not sure what it entails. I think there's some branches of design where I'm like, I have no idea what is in which area. If you go and research design, like study it, you might go into product design or fashion design or
Yeah.
architecture or industrial design, which to me just sounds like everything else.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, but it's really fun. It's really good.
Cool.
But I think it entails like the sort of the things we use, the products we use day to day. Like furniture, lighting, like a whole bunch of stuff can be in industrial design.
Okay.
This project was actually it was me and Ash Fisher, who I met a few years ago in a studio in Sydney, and he had this idea for this daybed, and we worked together to sort of co-design it over a few months and bring it into being.
Awesome.
It's been a really fun journey. I think it's a really fun way to like apply some of the ideas of sustainability or in designing with environment, designing with local materials, actually apply them in it. What seems like, to me anyway, a very tangible project.
Yeah.
It's very sound and grounded.
That's awesome. So is this something you can buy now, or does it have to be, I'm sure it's a custom made every time because or is it only one? There's only one. Right?
We've made one.
Yeah.
It's one at the moment. What we did, well, after finishing that design actually, so the design itself is we sort of wanted to work with this new material coming out of Defy, who's a Sydney-based recycling plastic facility, who are doing really cool things in that world. We wanted to work with one of their materials, which is this large sort of plastic sheet, and sort of incorporate that into a bit of furniture. So we made the Camada daybed, and what that is sort of like layers of this sort of plastic sheeting, forming this sort of like nice sort of like big sort of like little like structure. Daybed. So the focus on with that was using this sort of material to make this thing locally. So everything was sourced from within New South Wales, except for one bit of some of the fabric we got from down in Victoria. It's made of 3 materials. You can assemble it and disassemble it. There's no glue, there's no screws, there's nothing like that. Awesome. But it's this really like quite beautiful piece of what recycled plastic could be as a building material, as a design material, like not making it the core component, but just a factor that it can be made into beautiful things. That's awesome. Through that, we got awarded with the Powerhouse, the Carl Nielsen Design Program.
Nice,
and that's where we'll start working through how can we start making a few more of these.
I see.
It's just the one.
Nice. So they're going to support you in making more similar designs?
Yeah, so it's a 6-month program with them, and they'll work with us to sort of refine that design, talk to manufacturers and suppliers, figure out how we can scale it up a bit so we can start actually making a few more of them.
Amazing. Yeah. Oh, cool. So what else are you working? Is it Defy's design? So are you partnership with them, or is it some kind of what's your partnership like with Defy?
I partner with them. I don't even know actually.
Is it your part? It's a partnership, right? Or
yeah, we work very closely with them. Yeah,
okay.
I don't have any written partnership, but they very much work really closely with them in design and ongoing and supplying the materials and that sort of thing as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. And how do you envision it being? Maybe it's this project, or maybe it's your next one. How do you envision industrial design or furniture, some kind of thing? What's the future of that as well? Because in my eyes, you could see it'd be ideal. Like you can make things from waste, but then also deconstruct it and make it purposeful in another area. So, is there some? Yeah, is that? Yeah,
I think there would be so many industrial designers that have a much better grounding understanding of that. But I think I'll come from a very biased environmental sustainability perspective, which is I guess all I can offer. I think, like from my perspective, there are a whole range of amazing new materials coming into this world from that push for a more, sustainable, not climate disaster future that we all want.
Yes.
There's this massive push for like all these amazing new materials. And even in Australia, we have a whole range of organizations that are creating, plastic alternatives from seaweed or, these recycled sort of like, high quality recycled plastic options that can be utilized in this sort of design world. And I think a lot of the time it becomes a bit of a gimmick factor of, we've made this thing out of this new material, and that's the sole purpose of it. It just displays, it's just about, it's only material we found. But I think what I'm excited to see and work more with is, creating, just like very nice, like very like beautiful designs that like don't try and turn that idea of sustainability into its core thing. Like I think the fact that can just be part of good design, starting with a beautiful material, a beautiful sustainable material that's been well thought through and well considered in the wide, system of production we have today, starting with that to create things and just having those as just really nice products, really nice things that you can use and you can have, and just like showing that, you don't have to stick with old materials to make beautiful things
Yeah.
or have new things is
Yeah. Like you have to tear down a tree to make something newer. Yeah. It's exciting. Yeah. Like, because I feel like, yeah, the way we live now, it's just we throw everything out, but even like repurposing things. There's this company called Circonomy. Have you heard of them?
maybe.
They basically find stuff that was trash and then they repurpose it again to make it better.
Yeah.
So just taking stuff that was trash and making it treasure again.
Oh, it's tricky. Well, we kind of thought that through as well with this design. So with the Camada daybed, Ash and I were working on how it happens at the end of its life, you know?
Yeah.
Because a lot of things made out of recycled plastic, you know, you have like bottles that are recycled plastic, but at the end of the life of a bottle, you're throwing that away.
Yeah.
That's going in the bin.
Yeah.
You know? And like that will go back into Australia's recycling system, which, you know, not to critique it too much, but like isn't the 100% effective.
Yeah, I don't trust. I don't know if. Do you know much about the recycling system? Because I'm kind of scared.
Not enough to comment on it.
Yeah, same. I'm scared to even look at it because I don't know where stuff goes.
Yeah.
I have to trust it, I guess.
I think the people I've talked to who work in it are pretty scared of where it goes. But that means that, you know, like, I think, let's just hope they're getting there. But, you know, that plastic that was, you know, is a recycled plastic bottle is going to go back into that system.
Yeah.
That, you know, it may have been salvaged once, but salvaging it again and again, you know, that might just end up in the ocean or in a landfill, where it might be. Yeah. So what we're looking at with this sort of thing was not only designing for like longevity, so like designing a really like high-end sort of daybed, you know, this like Australian-made, handmade sort of daybed, like quite beautiful, designing that to last for an insanely long amount of time as a sort of high-value item. But also, you know, if it does reach the end of its life, you know, once, you know, we've taken all this material, put into this product, once it reaches the end of its life, all the material and components we put into it have an end-of-life plans. Like
that's good.
Plastic can be sent back to Defy for reprocessing, so it's HDP, so that can be redone. The fabric that's on it can go back into the supplier's fabric recycling program. Yeah. And then the foam that's within that, there's only 3 things that are in it, and the foam that's within it can go back into the foam recycling program that they offer.
Awesome.
So like, yeah, so even through that, even through like trying to really,
it's already ready. We've already thought about the end process at the beginning.
Yeah, it's ready to sort of be reintegrated into some new materials.
Amazing. So is there any? I think we'll end on. So yeah, this is okay? Is this so? Sorry. In terms of CH4, back to CH4. Are there any? So what's next for CH4, and also your Camada daybed? So I kind of want to understand what's next in your CH4 life, and then your obviously you have 6 months of that program left, so we have that, and then so what's next for CH4 and then your design life?
Yeah. I don't know at this point. Let me think. I think for CH4, we have just announced this new facility, this Laugh Bay facility. Nice. So for me, there's a lot of work that'll be going into trying to find new materials for that place, trying to think of new ways we can reduce the impact of that. So that'll take a lot of my time, I think, with CH4. It's just trying to like create and design a large-scale park that we can be proud of, and it can be a site that is, you know, establishes some new thinking and sustainability and land-based agriculture. And that'd be quite a big challenge for the next few months or a year.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
And then with the Camada daybed, it'll be, I think for us, we'll get through this program. We're really excited to see where that gets us at the end of it. Yeah. We'll get to work and be mentored by Adam Goodrum, who was sort of introduced to us through the Powerhouse Museum. And he's been incredible, such a very kind and generous person with time and wisdom. So at the end of that program, we're hoping, you know, to have that ready to go, learn a lot on how to not only design in a way that reflects what we think is, you know, environmentally right, environmentally conscious, but also learn how to turn those things into actual scalable things that we can make on a scale that, you know, we can offer to people, and it can be, you know, affordable and available to people, and design more. It was good. And to start designing more products with sort of newer, more interesting materials as well, and see what we can come up with after that.
Look out in the space. I'm keen for one. I'm redoing my apartment at the moment. I think I was telling you already, but yeah, I'm keen to get some nice sustainable furniture in there.
Perfect. Hit us up. There's some custom design.
And I do like to end with this question, since I've already asked you this question in our last podcast, but it might have changed. So the podcast is Life on Planet A, and I was curious, what's the meaning of life to you in this point of time, or if you always have like a philosophical if you already know, if you have this deep-rooted meaning of life inside of you.
Oh yeah, fair. Look at the tumultuous years from then to now. My meaning of life would have greatly changed and evolved. I don't know if I fully pinned it down yet. I think in the last few years, I don't know, like I think I'm coming to my like later 20s. I think it's a time of a lot of deep reflection and pondering and trying to find purpose and direction.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing I landed on I saw this question, I was like, what do I put here? It's like, what is real love to me? I was like, I did have a thought though, I think a year ago, which was very like comforting for me anyway, which was sort of this ultimate idea of like, you know, as human beings on a planet, and as like I studied environmental science, so I was a bit ecology focused. So I think as human beings on this planet, we have this need, as all sort of life does, to create environments that are better and healthier for more life to continue. So I think like for me, the purpose of life as a human being, as like, you know, someone existing in a wider ecosystem, in a wider planetary system, is just stewardship. It's just like taking care of that space so that, you know, more life can thrive in all its sort of ranges, from like humans, plants, animals, flora, fauna, whatever you want, creating an environment that is sound and accommodating and friendly to all of that space is very important to me. And that's kind of helps guide and direct me day to day.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah. I love to be like a normal animal who doesn't take from the earth, because most animals are pretty good at not destroying the earth. Like a cow, or, you know, bugs don't, you know, destroy the earth like we do. We're a very particular type of species that, you know,
At the moment we are, you know.
Yeah, but
I have hope. I would say I'm a naive optimist sometimes.
Really? I go back and forth all the time. I don't know. But...
naive optimist or nihilistic optimist. I don't know what to say there, but I think absolutely. But I think also like all animals affect the earth and environment, like on certain scales and environments. Like even in like the cattle industry we're working in, you know, there are much wider impacts to that industry. Like methane emissions is one component. You have a whole range of other.
Yeah, but we bred cows excessively.
Oh yeah, true. We've created environments where that impact is exacerbated, but there's always like an interaction with people in their environment. I mean, there's no world in which we will have no impact in our environment. No. It's just, it depends on how healthy those interactions are. Yeah, I think at the point they're very degraded. I think we're very separated from that environment. You know, I think like the amount of knowledge we have on the bioregions we exist in, and the ecosystems and ecology of our environment is quite low, and you know, but I think it's slowly building. I think we're slowly building up more appreciation for building a healthier relationship with ourselves and our environment.
I think so. It's pretty, sometimes I'm a bit pessimistic, but I do agree, because there's lots of good legislation. I don't know, but I love that answer, because it's how I feel inside. I'd love to be a good steward on Earth and live in a balanced world. So
I think we're capable of it.
We're capable. I mean, you and me are.
I think the world is. I have hope. Yeah.
Okay.
I think to do our jobs, I don't think you can't do our jobs if you didn't believe that at least a little bit.
I do believe a little bit. All right. Thanks, Orlando. Thanks so much for joining us on Life on Planet A. You're doing such great work, and I appreciate your time, and keep up the good work, and I can't wait to keep seeing what you do in the future.
It was nice to chat.
Yeah, it was fun. I learned a lot. Awesome. Like and subscribe to Life on Planet A, and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. So thanks, guys.